I'm attorney Phil Jusino, and this is the Phil Jusino Show. Tonight's topic is education in America, and my special guest is Frank Vetro. Good evening, Frank.
What's going on, Phil?
How you doing? Good to have you back again.
Thanks for having me.
Frank is an author. He's an educator. He's at Hope House Ministries. He had been the principal and assistant principal the principal of the Hampton Bays High School and the middle school.
Right.
And he's also a friend of mine, a dear friend. We've been doing radio and TV for quite a long time, and he's also a client of mine. So Frank, give us the 2-minute version, a little bit of your background, focusing on your educational background and a little bit about what you're doing today, which is kind of unique.
So education-wise, I taught science for about 7 or 8 years, biology and chemistry. After that, I got my administrative degree, went back to school, and like you said, when I got my administrative degree, I went to Hampton Bays out east, and I was the assistant principal for the secondary building, which was a middle school and high school combined. Did well at that position, became principal. So I was principal of the middle school, 7 through 12, so middle school and high school combined. And I got a lot of experience because in Hampton Bays there was no support. There was no assistant superintendent for this, coordinator for this. I did everything, including security. I didn't even have security guards. True story. Wow. I didn't have security guards when I first got to Hampton Bays. I implemented them in like 2006.
Hey, Joe Clark?
Yeah, everything. I was like, remember Johnny?
You walk around with a bat?
Remember, I did. And remember, like, what was it? I was young. I was like 31, so I was like Johnny Depp. You know, what was that? Johnny Depp. Remember the 80s? What was that show? 21 Jump Street.
21 Jump Street.
I was like, because when I'm kicking kids out of school, like, who's this young Paul kicking me? It was crazy. So we got the school. We actually saved that school from a state takeover. And so I learned how to do everything in education, central office stuff, special ed stuff. I had to do everything. So it was a nice learning environment for me as a young guy. And then from there, now, as you said, I work at Hope House Ministries for a private school, which is unique because what I do now is I educate kids who have been arrested, kicked out of school, and they're mandated to me by the courts. A judge calls.
So you deal with the court system.
I deal, ironically, if you know anything else about my background, we don't have to get into it now. I work with the court system. Not too long ago, I had a Zoom meeting with Judge Camacho, actually.
Okay.
So the judges in family court, criminal court, send us kids that they think would fit our program. We interview the kid, and I work with all the public schools on Long Island, and we educate them. They reside where I am, so
Right.
They live there, and they stay with us for 7 months. And
So you were open during COVID?
Yeah, I never missed a day because they lived there. I had to be. Somebody has to
Someone
be there.
had to be there.
Yeah. So
Okay.
yeah.
Now, when you were young, like when I was young, I know I wanted to be, baseball player, but an attorney, and education was fascinating to me. In fact, I got to teach at Dowling, but that was college. When did you decide to become an educator?
It was totally by mistake. I actually went to Stony Brook. I wanted to be a physical therapist, and these visions of grandeur, being a trainer for the New York Rangers and all
Sure.
that stuff. So, but like a lot of people, I totally messed up. I screwed everything up. So I was bombing out my first 2 years. Huge school, not used to the 1,000 people in the class, things like that, and my grade point average was so low. It was very competitive physical therapy. They took like 23 people out of 1,000 resumes, things like that. Stony Brook was very known for their physical therapy, which they still are.
I never knew that, Frank.
I tried to correct my error, and I did so good for the next 3-4 years.
You did well?
So good. I didn't go to school for English.
That's at science, I forgot.
Yeah. So anyway,
Goodness.
right. I say the words nobody knows how to pronounce. You can't correct me. And it was just too late, though. I couldn't recover. So I went to the advisor at Stony Brook. I said, listen, I got to get out of here. I'm going to my 6th year, and I'm trying to get accepted. She looks at on the computer. She goes, holy shit. She goes, look at all these science courses you took. Because I was going physical therapy. I was trying to recover. She says, man, you worked in a research lab. You did this. You did that. Like, wow. You want to be a science teacher? I said, what do I have to do? She goes, you have more science courses than any science teacher I ever knew. So all you got to do is student teach and take the little
Right.
seminar course that goes with it, and by the end of the semester, you're a science
So
teacher.
you're the accidental teacher
I
or
said,
accidental
I said,
educator.
sign me up. By the end of the semester, 4 months, I was a science teacher.
Now, so you took educational classes as well
Right.
to become.
You got to take a couple just to go with the.
So you can become a teacher with just a bachelor's degree, and then you have to get your
But
master's
you
within
know,
a certain time.
right? You have to get your master. You become a teacher, but yeah, but you can lose. You can become a teacher, but then lose. You have what's called a provisional certification, whatever they call it now. But I had a provisional until you get your permanent. You get a certain amount of years.
So you can be in the classroom.
You have to be yes, and then for like 5 years or 3 or 5, whatever it is, it changed by now. And if you don't do a certain amount of things, get your master's degree,
Right.
teach for a certain amount of years consecutively, then you lose it and start over again.
Now, when you became a teacher, now I know this day and age, you have teachers talking about their sex lives, you have teachers
Oh,
talking about their politics, transgender issues. I graduated high school, Frank, in high school 1982. I don't recall ever knowing the sexual preference of any of my teachers. I didn't even know their politics, which I thought was the better way to go.
right.
When you're a little bit younger than me, but when you were a young teacher, what did you see your mission to be?
It's going to sound corny, but it's any position you are in school. I don't care. Even when I was a principal, like, what do you do? I never said I was a principal. I used to say I educate kids.
Right?
I educate kids. If you're the
Mm-hmm.
groundskeeper, you're the custodian. You educate kids. That's
Right.
everybody's in that building. Whether the job of a custodian is to make the school look good and to fix it,
Right.
make it so you have pride in it. It all
Sure.
contributes
Sure.
to the educational component. Everybody's educating the student in some facet. I just always said I educate. You develop their minds, and you hope you can make a nice, well-rounded, young man or woman, and to go into society, as a balanced person. Um, it's not just the curriculum. You want them to pass the state exam. Unfortunately, the state
There's
exam.
always pressure on to do
Yeah,
that.
so you want that, of course, but I always said that the facts aren't. It's because people always say, let's say you learn in biology, man, who cares about genetic? Like I'm going to know about DNA. The president of the United States can't tell you what about a double helix DNA. And I always tell people, yeah, because you always hear in school, why am I learning this?
Right.
And I'm going to tell you why you're
In
learning
math
this.
and science, you hear that a lot.
And I'm going to tell you right now, nobody's ever heard this, and no other educators ever explained it the way I'm going to. I can promise you this. Here's why you learn. Here's why you go to school. It's not because you're learning facts. And I say to people, if you're at the gym and you do bicep curls, now, if you worked out for any amount of extended time, you probably did 15, 20,000 bicep curls in your life. And I asked somebody, can you remember bicep curl number 15,191? No, no, but that bicep curl helped make in some facet your bicep more capable.
Sure.
And then I go to the next, the pec muscles. How many bench presses? Can you remember bench press number 803? No, but that press made it more capable. There's different parts of your body, different exercises. So you go K through 12 in public school, and there's different
Mm-hmm.
subject areas. 4 major subjects: there's art, music, all this other stuff, and each develop a certain part of your mind.
I heard a scientist describe it as pathways in your brain.
And what happens is there's different parts of your brain, and each subject touches on a different part of that brain. The exercises, the process by which you learn y equals mx plus b and all that stuff in math, the distance formula, you forget that, just like you forgot the bicep curl individually.
Right.
But the process by which you learn made that part of your brain more capable in life.
Right.
And that's why there's other ways to develop it too, don't get me wrong. But when people say, I never need this, no, you don't.
Right. Now, and before the show, we were talking about education as opposed to indoctrination. Now, it's almost like we shouldn't even have to have that discussion. A teacher should teach. When you taught science, you didn't discuss politics. You didn't discuss, maybe who you were dating or those kinds of
No.
ancillary things that really have no place in the classroom,
Yeah,
in my
yeah,
opinion.
you left your personal life out of it, unless they ask the general question like, Mr. V, what are you doing for Thanksgiving? You going over your mom?
Right.
Just general things like that. But yeah, nothing intimate, of course, and nothing too personal. And as far as politics goes, unless it's maybe they would do so more in a government course or something like
History.
that. Yeah,
Right.
but no, you entertain their opinion and you respect their opinion, whatever they have, but you don't push your beliefs on them. That's for sure. Especially in the science course, there's no need for it ever.
Sure.
There may be a general conversation here and there, but nothing like what goes on now. Nothing like what goes on now.
Now, when you were a principal, right, you had to deal with the Board of Education. Just let the viewers know what is the principal runs the school, correct?
That's right.
And you have overseers in a sense. Is that the Board of Education?
Yeah, well, it'll be the super. Where I was, small district, the superintendent was my immediate supervisor.
Okay.
He was my boss. The boss of the school district, maybe some people don't notice, it's not the superintendent. It's the Board of Ed. The Board of Ed is the one at the Board of Ed meeting that says yes or no.
And they hire?
They're the final say in the hiring. They may not be a part of. They're not a part of a hiring of, say, if you're hiring a first year, English teacher. They're not going to take part in that.
Right.
But an administrator, yeah, that'll be like the last step. Go in front of the Board of Ed. There's certain different rounds.
So they can be very powerful.
And they are very powerful. But depending on a district, they have a lot of power. See, what happens is at a Board of Ed meeting, that's where they vote for anything. Buying a pencil, I don't care paper, I don't care what it is. Nothing happens in a school district until the Board of Ed says yes or no. Majority.
So you don't make that list. Well, you could make the list, but you got to go through them.
Yeah, or you can make the list in a bad way. I'm getting rid of this guy, or you know what I mean. There's so. But the thing is, here's where the superintendent maintains their power. The Board of Ed can only vote on what they know. They're given information. It's a stack of papers, and they have to review it before the board meeting. So the board clerk, the clerk of the board, and the superintendent secretary
Right.
gives them the information. So they only can vote on what's given to them, what they know. Maybe they don't know everything.
But can the public, like I know in Virginia, in the last governor's election, the Board of Education in a particular county in Virginia was a big deal, right? So if the superintendent, let's say, doesn't like a particular issue, you're saying he could leave it off the ballot?
Well, it's not a ballot. It's just a stack of papers that they study, and then they vote on things at the next. There's different.
Yeah, but what if I'm in that school district, and whether my kid goes there or not, I have a voice, paying taxes, and I go there and I say I'd like to put this for a vote. Does the citizen
No, you don't.
has no power?
No, you don't do that.
They can speak at the meetings.
There's public. Well, there's a public comment session, but a board doesn't have to have the open comment section.
Okay. Oh, Ed Vilbig says hello from Atlanta. He's another administrator. He
Travel
was
tips.
Ed from Atlanta. Travel tips. So he's going to tell us how to get here for Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Mike Levitt. My favorite high school teacher told us you're learning things you'll never use again, so you can get your diploma and not make minimum wage. Interesting. And then teachers run the school. Good luck firing a teacher.
Well, when it comes to that, let me explain. Let me build on what Ed just said. It's an interesting position you put in. Take it from me as a 31-year-old administrator now, and I'm the boss, quote unquote, of a 30-year veteran who grew up in Hampton Bays, who worked his way through the system in Hampton Bays. Now is a 30-year teacher in Hampton Bays, knows everybody, grew up with everybody in the town, and who's really the boss? Who really has the power? Me as his boss, or this man who?
Well, it's like in the military. In a war, let's say, the sergeant knows so much more than the second Louis.
Yeah.
And the men are going to probably listen to that sergeant, even though they get the orders from they want to survive.
That's
they
right.
can listen to the sergeant.
That's right. So it's a strange. You have to really be careful. So Ed makes a good point. The teachers can have more power, depending. It's a strange time because tenure and everything. I was non-tenure. Now you have tenure. They have more job stability than me when I first got there. So who's got the power? I'm going to threaten to fire a 30-year teacher who grew up in the town. No, he threatened to in fact he threatened to fire me.
Now with we all hear about tenure. So you're a principal, and a teacher has tenure. We just talked a little bit about that. Explain exactly what tenure is.
Real simple. All tenure is now. I could argue a lot against teachers, which I do, even though I've been in education for 28 years. This is something that I'm for because people frown upon tenure, and I'm going to tell you something right now. I'm going to bring your profession into this as the culprit. Tenure is nothing more than due process. So when people start bashing teachers because they get tenure, my response to that is, and I'm not in public schools anymore, everybody, so I don't have those safety nets. So,
you're a private institution.
Now I'm private, yeah. So it's just due process, and I always tell people, I wish you had due process. I wish everybody had due process regarding work. Unfortunately, they don't, especially in New York. It's at will employment.
Right.
So tenure is nothing more than due process. You can't be just fired for the heck of being fired.
But to the layman, and even though I taught at the college, that was still a private institution. But to a person like myself who does his homework, and to me, tenure almost sounds like short of the teacher shooting somebody, and obviously I'm being a little facetious,
Yeah.
but short of doing something really bad, they keep their job. Am I far off?
No, you're not. But here's why. Here's why I believe this happens. Okay.
What the belief of what I just said?
Uh, yeah, it happens a lot. There are teachers that they know should be fired, but it costs like two, three, maybe more $100,000. You have to if you to go through the once you start a tenure proceeding of due process. Now it goes to a legal proceeding. Now we all know how legal proceedings go. Adjourn, adjourn, delay, delay. So now you have the union attorney, this attorney, arbitrator, all kinds of stuff going on because there's a process. So due process is important. Now, the concept is good, but now you get attorneys involved. The teacher goes on leave, paid leave.
With pay.
With pay. Now they got to get somebody in there, not paying them. This could take years because now, in my belief,
Right.
now you got attorneys, and attorneys are going to delay.
Well, blame the attorney, Frank,
I am.
right?
No, I am. And I blame the system that the attorney's working. Now you get delays. Now you get a legal system involved. And you know how it goes, Phil, the delays. So the delays take long. So right now, I'm going to say due process could be streamlined, and it wouldn't cost, if it didn't cost $400,000 to do it, more school districts would get rid of a teacher in 2-3 weeks. Due process doesn't have to take 3 years, Phil, but it does. And that's because it goes into the legal system.
Now, you've seen, I've spoken about it on our shows, and I talk about, I like a meritocracy. Like I always use the example, a general manager wouldn't pick a baseball team, let's say based on tenure, right? Or I got to get this looking person, or I got to get that religion, and you wouldn't. You pick the best players. It could be 9 black guys, 9 white guys. It doesn't matter. My belief is that maybe education is not a true meritocracy. Because I'll give you an example. Let's say there's a teacher that's been there 20 years, and he doesn't have the enthusiasm, let's say, as a young teacher coming in who's going to put the time in, and it is like when you were a young teacher, right? You were pretty popular, and kids liked you. You were engaging, and then you might have an older teacher who's just marking time.
Right.
If someone has to get fired, isn't it more likely that younger teacher with the energy and the enthusiasm than the older fella? Is that fair to say?
They wouldn't get fired unless they didn't have tenure, but yeah, the younger teacher would get access.
So
first.
the better teacher, let's say,
for sure, the younger teacher
could be on the chopping block
would
first.
get accessed. They'd get accessed,
Right.
not fired, but accessed if needed.
But that wouldn't necessarily happen in, let's say, a private institution.
Right. That's right. That wouldn't.
But so then it's not a true merit. Let's say a public school.
Kind of related to that. When I was first year, I was giving observations and we're discussing. Superintendent, me, a couple of other people around the table in the superintendent's office, and we're discussing certain evaluations with certain teachers and who's up for tenure, who's not, and we're discussing observations of a 20-something year veteran teacher and a first-year teacher. Oh, we'll give them both this, outstanding, whatever it was. Check the box. I'm like, well, if they're both doing the same thing, so I did.
Right.
I think of this. It goes along the lines of what you're saying. I'm saying, wait a second. If they're both doing the same thing, why do they both get outstanding? You're saying that the 25-year, whatever it was at the time, veteran teacher's doing the same thing a first-year teacher's doing. Now, either he's doing something that
Why couldn't they both be outstanding?
Because I'm thinking, well, maybe that first-year teacher is, if they're doing the same thing in 25, maybe they're a little advanced.
Right.
Like they're doing the same. How could I measure them the same? This one just got into the profession, and she's doing the same thing he's doing already. Maybe she's doing better than him. Maybe he should just get good or adequate or whatever, satisfactory, and she should get outstanding.
But what does that translate into? So the older fella he gets good, and the younger teacher gets that. What does it mean?
It doesn't mean a damn thing, but they'll complain. But the funny thing is, they will complain to you, knock on your door, and say, "How come I didn't get this?" Like, does it matter? And I would say that to them, like, does it really matter?
See, like, look, in sports, you could have a rookie that's hitting 350, and an older fella that could have been the greatest ball player known to man, and his time is up, right? So the old guy is going to be replaced by the younger, better player, right? Because you can see who's better. Guys hitting 350, old guys hitting 250. That's easy. But when you're a principal and you have to decide on either promotions or who's going to be the head of a department, do you look at meritocracy or do you look at seniority, or is it a combination of both?
It's a combination, and you don't have to things like that. It doesn't have to go on seniority.
But do you decide the department head?
I decide that. But I bring other people in. The trick is to bring all the stakeholders in. I always spoke to the union leaders in the building, because you always want to go by them. This way, when something went wrong, like, I spoke to the union.
I spoke to you.
I spoke to you.
You were in the loop.
You always bring the stakeholders. But the trick is this: you already know what your decision is going to be, and you kind of like you get everybody's play. And sometimes they influence you, but you know what's going on. You know what's going on, and but yeah, you decide you base on a lot of things. There's good teachers and there's good employees. Okay, and you want both. But I always said I'll take a good employee over a good teacher, because you have these teachers that do a decent job teaching, but they're a pain in the ass, and they're always not going to do it. Something else, like, Jesus. Then there's a good employee who may not be that good of a teacher, but they'll listen to you, and they're going to listen, do whatever you want them to do, and you will mold them into being a good teacher eventually. I'll take a good employee generally over a good teacher anytime.
That's another question. How much influence does a principal have? Because there's a curriculum. Like, let's say someone's a fourth grade teacher. There's a curriculum they have to follow. How much influence do you have over them to, let's say, up their game? And how do you do that? You observe. How do you get that feedback? Because fourth graders, you're not going to go to a fourth grader. Hey, how's your teacher doing?
You bring them aboard. See, I knew what was going on. I knew what was going on in the classroom before the observation ever happened. I walked around the school all the time, and I would stop in the hallway, and I would do one of these. I'm cleaning the locker.
Listening?
I'm looking. I know what's going on in the classrooms. It didn't have, the observation was just a formality. I already knew. Because let's face it, when you go observe a teacher, they pull out this canned lesson that they've been doing for 30 years, right, and this is their lesson. They put on the shelf for that one day. We all know what goes on. I did it. So it's, any teacher out there, stop yelling at me from your bedroom right now. I did the same thing. All right, and you prepare the class. Hey, if you know the answer to the question, raise your right hand. If you don't know the answer, raise your left hand. This way you're picking on everybody that knows the right answer. You see what's going on now?
Okay.
Now, look at all the learning going on. See, there's tricks like you wouldn't believe that what's going on in the classroom. It happens. So what you do is you bring teachers aboard. I told teachers when I got to Hampton Bays, listen, I want you to try new, and I really did this, and it worked. I want you to try new things. Take a chance, do something. If it goes well, I will give you every ounce of credit at every board meeting, every public forum. If it goes wrong, I promise you, I will take the fall for it. And when it happened, he's like, he really did that. And man, they would have jumped in front of a bus for you at that point. And then they start doing it.
You got that back.
Yeah.
Now, Mike Levitt, an attorney, friend of mine, he says, last hired, first fired.
Right.
Is there any truth to that?
That's the rule. Well, there is. That's the whole. But that's just the excess rule. If I have more seniority, when there's the excess isn't fired, it just means they're cutting back. It means when the job opens up, whoever got excess gets first dibs on it. You're not really fired. We just had to cut back, and you were the first.
But when that decision is made, let's say for budgetary reasons, do they look at who's the better teacher,
No.
or just that you've been there 10 years, you've been there 3 weeks, I'm sorry.
That's it.
We have to let you go.
That's it.
Do you think that's fair?
No, not necessarily. No.
And why is that? Now, it's a rule, I understand that. Is that something that's always been that way, or is it?
In school, yeah. Excess is not fired. It's what he just said. That's what it is. Last hired, first fired. That's how it goes. It's not firing.
So the attorney got it right.
The attorney got it right.
He
that
was
time.
correct.
He got it right. And he's also responsible for due process going too long. No, I'm just kidding. But no, he's right.
But it's funny. But I don't think I've ever heard of tenure described as due process. But
that's what it is.
I understand.
It's all it is due process. And it takes forever once attorneys get involved. I'm sorry. It does. And it doesn't have to take that long. But it does, because it gets jammed up. And then it costs the school money. And bad teachers stay employed. It's a fact. Mm-hmm. And teachers that should be not only fired, but put up on charges. Actual charges. Me and you know one. We're going to go there. And they leave them alone. Mm-hmm. They don't want to pay the hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Now, if a teacher, let's say, does something wrong, whether it be in the classroom or outside the classroom, and they're going to get let go, right? And they get sent. Could they get sent to another school? And what they did, does that follow? Like, remember the priest scandal? A
Yeah.
priest might have molested an altar boy, and then they send him to another parish, and nothing is said. So that poor parish takes this guy on, not knowing they got a predator. What about that with education?
All right, so it used to happen all the time. I mean, all the time. These quiet resignations, and we're gonna
Go
move
away
you on,
quietly and
and we'll give you a good reference, the whole 9 yards, and they go somewhere else. Yes. Um, that really can't happen anymore.
why is that?
If they do, well, if they do something wrong, let's say, well, let's say they commit, let's say they commit a crime. If a crime's involved and they're up on charges, that in 2001, that New York State at least implemented fingerprinting. That was a new thing. So now there's a whole system, and they get when you get arrested, it goes right to the state ed department automatically through the criminal justice system. Now, in order to go to another district, doesn't matter how long you've been in one district. Like when I went to Hampton Bays, I had tenure at Newfield High School and right over here,
Right.
in Selden, and I got fingerprinted. And if I went from Hampton Bays on, I'd get fingerprinted again. I've been fingerprinted.
So when you started first as a teacher, that wasn't in place.
No, but then when I left, I got fingerprinted to go. So if I did something, it was going to pop up.
They don't do a DNA swab with you guys?
That they don't do, but
not,
they do.
Not yet.
They do the local. They do federal check. Yeah, all this stuff.
So let's say a student.
So you can't just move on like that anymore, because there'll be if there's something wrong with you, there'll be a red. There'll be some kind of red flag.
So let's say a teacher hit a kid, and they got fired, and then a year later they apply to another school. That information is going to be available to the new school.
Or
no?
No, not necessarily.
So where's the safeguard there?
No. If they weren't arrested, no, that's there'd be no fingerprinting involved.
Okay.
Well, if they hit a kid, though, it's somebody's going to be up on charges.
But let's say somebody grabbed a kid or something like that, where there was no arrest.
Yeah, they could go away quietly.
They could, and then just appear somewhere else.
They could.
But would they contact? Like, let's say that happened, and you got rid of a guy. Would you get a call someday or a letter from the new school saying, "Oh, I heard
you can't even give a bad reference.
Bill Jones used to."
You can't even give a bad reference. You can't say anything bad. You get in trouble for that. You could get in trouble for giving a bad reference now. So I did
a problem with that.
Me too. I let a teacher go. He sucked. He sucked, and he was a big dude. So I thought he was gonna kill me. He was big, and I got a call, and I'm like, Jesus. And you have to answer questions. I guess they pick up on how you're answering. You know, you answer a certain way, but there's a certain tone.
Sure.
You know, there's a way to do it, but you can't say anything bad. But there's a way to get the point across.
He's a good teacher. That's all I can say.
Yeah, and then when he asks another question, you say, he's a good teacher. Then when he asks another question,
he's a good teacher.
He's a good teacher.
And then
he's so good you let him go.
Read between the lines.
Yeah.
Now, Ed Vilbig said there's a teacher shortage in most states. Are you aware of that? Have you heard that?
I mean, in the city, in Las Vegas, yeah, there's a teacher shortage. Yeah, they hire people with no, a carpenter does shop class. He's a carpenter. Right. And now he's teaching shop.
Now, when you became a teacher, was there a shortage?
No.
Why do you think there is one now?
It depends. In certain subjects, there were. Good luck always finding a physics teacher. You can't. So there's always
your brother is a math teacher, isn't he?
He's math. I was chemistry. Good luck finding chemistry and biology.
Danny had him 1 year.
Yeah. See. So. Yeah, there's shortages. Of course, there's shortages.
What is the more plentiful, let's say, area where there's plenty of teachers?
Oh, social studies.
That's my favorite subject.
Yeah. It's social studies. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Good luck getting a social studies job. There's people begging groceries. Always. There's so many social studies teachers forget about it. Not for nothing. So science, unlike any other subject, if you're a secondary math teacher, you could teach anything 7 through 12, any math subject. English, if you're a secondary English teacher, 7 through 12, any English, anything. In order to teach chemistry, you have to be chemistry certified. In order to teach earth science certified. It's so specialized. This is what you call the content. This is what you call a content specialty test. So the best, pat myself on the back and every other science teacher, Your best chance of getting a really knowledgeable teacher is science, because it's specialized individually per subject.
Like Walter White in Breaking Bad.
That's right.
Smart guy.
That's right. That's right. That's
He went
right.
down a different dark path,
He really did.
but a smart
You know,
guy.
Ed Vilbig also says something about parents and their kids raising them, and I always said everybody likes discipline, Ed, in school. All parents love it until it's their kid you're disciplining,
Right.
and they don't love it anymore.
Oh, I hear that from Ed all the time.
That's true. It's a fact. I got into so many fights in Hampton Bays when I first got there. Oh, forget it, man.
Now let's segue into that a little bit. If you have a student, let's say that's misbehaving, I'll say that, and he's acting inappropriately, or he hits another kid or whatever, how hard is it to discipline that kid
Well,
in
now,
a public school?
yeah, you have to remember now, I'm removed from a public
Let's
school.
go public, and then we can talk private.
I could speak about when I was there. It's probably harder now. Everything you do with a student, though, is you're talking about it from a teacher's perspective.
Right, or an administrator.
It's it everything you do with a kid is not what happens at that moment. It's the rapport you built with that kid throughout.
Right.
If you have a good relationship, it's easier to discipline them. They'll accept it more.
But there are some kids that are very difficult.
Of course there are.
Especially in this day and age.
Of course, though. But some, for example, not that I got along with every kid as a teacher. I had my problems too. But I did a very good. In fact, I got a reputation. I got the quote unquote. I'm not saying they were bad, but the quote unquote bad kids, the unruly
Troubled
kids. Oh, he's good with those kids. Give him to me. I didn't get an honors kid until I made the schedule when I was the head of the department. I got all the sweat hogs because I was good with them. You get labeled so because
The younger listener might not know what the heck you're talking about.
That's-
Welcome back, Cotter.
that's correct. So the point,
Look it
so
up.
it's before you discipline a kid, you build a relationship where you take interest in their life, and so and when you have that where you take and you're talking to them, not just about, hey, did you do you know what a ribosome is? Did you do your science homework? What about, hey, what did you take interest in their life? Hey, how's your new job? How's this? When you take interest in their life,
Right.
they accept the discipline more. Discipline isn't a bad word. When you do discipline right, it's a positive term. It's not. I don't
Sure.
mean get the paddle out and hit them. That's not what I mean. But it's better ways of handling students.
Well, remember, Mr. Miyagi, there is no bad student, only bad teacher.
That's right.
There's
That's
some
right.
truth to that.
There's some truth to that.
But also, how the kids are raised, that's important.
It's always the family. It's everything comes back to the family. I don't care anybody. 95% is the family. But when when you're the principal in local parentis, I am
Mhm.
the parent of that building.
Sure.
I have more rights. I had
You're
more.
there.
I had
You're-
more rights than the cops, like the search and stuff like that. When I
Right.
busted a kid for marijuana in Hampton Bays, I had 2 cops in there. And the cops they were in the room, but I searched them.
Now, so to get rid of a student, there's certain safeguards in place. You just can't say, I'm kicking you. You could suspend a student.
Yeah. If it's like more than 5 days, you got to go to a board.
Yeah, because I've handled some of those
you
hearings.
need a hearing. Yeah.
hearings. Now, with a private school,
If it's a special ed student, then it's
more.
more. Yeah.
But now a private school, where you are now, let's say.
Oh, well, where I am now, there's no politics involved. I don't deal with parents. I do talk to parents, but these kids are in trouble. Like, they're in trouble with the law. So I'm not saying I could get away with doing anything I want. No.
Right.
And I would never take advantage of the situation anyway. But no, it's easy where I am.
Well, you know what? It's funny. I have a question for Ed. I know he's watching. Now, let's say St. Anthony's. That's a private school. So they can have different rules, Frank, right? And Ed's watching. They can have different rules how to punish, let's say, how to hire or fire a teacher than a public school. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just like, I don't have a teaching certificate. I have a Juris Doctorate. I have a doctorate in law.
Okay.
I was able to teach at Dowling as an adjunct professor, even though I had no formal educational experience.
Right.
But I could never, right now, like, I could probably get hired by the Stony Brook School. Let's say they said, oh, we want to do a law class.
Yeah.
I could, or St. Anthony's even.
Yes.
But I couldn't go to Ward Melville
No.
and try to teach.
A private school. If you're in a private school, you don't even need to be certified. It's a private school. They do whatever they want. You don't have to go there either.
Right.
But you don't have to be certified. Ed Vilbig, Ed Vilbig, Danny, says if a high school, can we be sued if the high school? Of course, I got sued. You get sued for anything. They show up to Board of Ed meetings and John Ray, the put on a
Sure.
show, the attorney in Miller Place. He put on a show, man. Had his top hat on, his cane. He comes into the Board of Ed meeting and hands us all subpoenas. You know, he marching through. You know how he
Sure. I
operates.
spoke to him
That's the first.
yesterday,
That's
as
the
a matter of
first time
fact.
I ever met the guy. I met him quite a few times after that, but first time I met him,
Colorful guy, excellent
and
attorney.
he handed me this, and he handed me the lawsuit. You know, we all got, but you don't get sued personally. The district gets sued.
Right.
I wasn't sued. I was just part of the district, so he sued everybody.
You're named.
I was named in the lawsuit. There was a fight once called the zero tolerance where a Hispanic kid got jumped by 3 white kids, and I'm principal, and they're in my building, and I'm looking like this. I'm going like this, and I'm like, the white kids, they look like they got run over by a train. This guy, the Hispanic kid, is like, he looked like he just got out of an office meeting. I'm like, wait a second.
And he was outnumbered.
I'm like, you jumped him, and all the white kids' parents were there complaining that this kid should be suspended, zero tolerance. I'm like, wait a second. These 3 guys, your kids jumped them. And I'm looking, I'm like, they jumped you. And he goes like this. He goes, I'm good. I'm like, you want me to kick him out of school for defending himself? I refused.
Right.
But it's zero tolerance. We're going to the board. I'm like, you go to the board.
I don't like that zero
I
tolerance.
said, you can go to the board all you want, and the board can overrule me, whatever they want to do. I am not suspending this kid because he got jumped by 3 of you guys, and he won.
Now, Doreen Giuliano said, did you paddle them, Frank? I think she was kidding about that.
The board, they called it the Board of Ed. There was a paddle board with the Board of Ed written on it.
But if a student hits you, can you hit them back?
I'm jacking them up. So if
you could defend yourself.
You could defend yourself. There was
give him a wedgie?
This actually happened. Newfield High School. It was the first story, and 2 kids. I swear to God, I thought they were kidding. Said, "We'll throw out the window, Mr. V." I'm like, "You're not throwing me out the window." I'm not kidding, man. I was at the chalkboard. There was a chalkboard at the time. They tried to throw me out the window. No bull. One guy was
Jim Belushi in that TV. Remember the movie, The
Principal?
Principal?
I'm not kidding. One guy was a pipsqueak. He jumps on my shoulder. I'm not kidding. I went like this. And I threw. Oh, he was nothing. The other guy was pretty stocky, football player. I'm like, are you kidding me? And he's really. I'm like. So I went down. I squat down. I pick him up. I take 3 steps and I drop him on his back. I say, "You do it again, I'm gonna kill you." The classroom cheers. I pick him up and said, "Don't ever do that again."
What were they thinking?
His name was Matt, and they never mentioned it to anybody. I was never spoken to about that. I'm like, "Don't you ever do that again?" No, I'm not going to let them throw me out the window. Funny thing is, it was the first story. Like, what are you going to do? Throw it
You get back in. Now, when they say zero tolerance, that means if 2 kids fight, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
The facts, you're both gone.
Yeah.
But I never liked that because, like you just said, let's say a kid gets jumped. Well, it could be 1, 2, I don't care. He didn't start the fight. Is he supposed to just stand there and take a licking?
I always put, because I had when I went to Hampton Bays, I redid all the policies. Every policy there was, I redid every one of them with committees. So it wasn't just me. Everybody had a say in it, and it got voted on. So when something went wrong, we're like, whoa, we all voted on, So you always have these, what do you call it, safeguards,
Sure.
But I always put some type of clause in where it's like zero tolerance. However, there may be, whatever. Like I got wiggle room. I always put something. I don't know what the wording was, but I made it clear in the policy that I had a say in. It didn't have to be that way, and that's why I kept that kid in school.
Well, I remember when I was in high school. Right, I won't get too much into the details, but I got into an altercation with this guy, and he goes out and goes to his locker, and he comes back to the library, Frank, with a lead pipe. And I'm there, I had my football jersey on because it was a game was the next day. It was Smithtown West High School. And some of my teammates were egging me on, like, kick it, you know what. And I didn't want to fight him, but he had a lead pipe. So I said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Walk in front of me." He did one of these things, like walk in front of me. So I end up punching him. He goes down, right? Librarian I never seen move so fast, hops over. Another teacher, science teacher, comes in. Right? I'm talking to the teacher, and I only hit him once. The guy gets up. He tries to get me from behind. He should have hit me when he had the chance. He didn't. I grabbed his arm, one underneath, and I pummeled him. Right? I got suspended. He got suspended for 2 days. I was allowed to play football on Saturday. The coach said, "Come back on Monday."
That can't happen.
Come back on Monday.
Yeah.
Right, so I got to play on the Saturday game. But there, he came in with a lead pipe. Should I have just waited for him to take a swing at me?
No.
And I understand this is school. This is not like the streets.
No.
But that's a perfect example of if a guy were to throw a punch, well, he had a pipe. If he swings that pipe and hits me, He's gonna hurt me
I would
seriously. Or
have,
kill me.
I would have tried to have you back as the principal. I don't know what they do these days, but no, you're in the right if you ask me. Now Ed said, yeah, you could hit him back, the student, but you'll lose your job, which
Right.
again
Well.
may be the case these
Right.
days. Like maybe what I did, when they started throwing me out the window, maybe nowadays I'd still get in trouble for that for some strange reason because it's backwards now. I don't know. I'm removed from public
Hmm.
education.
Now this is what Ed said. St. Anthony's is great. Yes, they don't have to follow curriculum and discipline mandates. You still can't hit or abuse kids, obviously.
Right.
And then he said St. Anthony's is allowed to suspend kids where a public school may not be allowed to. School systems doing away with out of school suspension.
Well, well, well. The point. Well, to build on what Ed said, the reason for that is everybody's entitled to public education.
Right.
If you're in the age,
But you're not entitled to go to St. Anthony's
but you're not
necessarily.
entitled to go to a private school. You don't have to go to a private school, pay to go to a private school. So,
Right.
you don't You don't have to go to St. Anthony's. They could kick you out. We don't need you here.
Don't need you here.
Go away.
Goodbye.
But you're entitled then you go into Cold Spring Harbor, wherever the school is over there. You'll go to that school or wherever you're from. But you're entitled to a public education. So that's why St. Anthony's could do what they do.
Now, another question. You had mentioned that to me some years ago. Illegal kids of illegal, let's say illegal immigrants.
That's a tough one.
You have to educate them.
Yeah.
So how does that work? Let's say someone's here illegally, the kid is brought to the school, right? And you have to educate them. You can't say, well, you're not here legally. So how does that work?
It's bad because so when I was in Hampton Bays again, we had a high percentage of that, and every board meeting they're screaming and they'd yell at me and you took them. I'm like,
What, the parents who are against it?
yeah, and I'm like, no, what was it? I can't think of it. Patriot Act, right? Patriot, and I'm like, listen, they're in the town. It's like, what do you want me to do? It's not the 14-year-old's fault. I ain't gonna blame
Is it better they're in class than on the streets?
What you want them to spray paint 7-Eleven? I don't know. What do you want them to do? Wreak havoc? So you might as well have an educated legal. I don't
Mhm.
know. Like what? Now the flip side to that is it's expensive
Right.
because now you got to teach
And
them
it
the
increases
language.
class size.
You're teaching them the language. A lot of them have one-to-ones because they have to learn the language. The tests are in their language and all these things to assist them that we give them. It's not like the old days, My family came here from Italy. I'm not against immigration by in any means. That's why I'm here because my family.
Right.
I'm first generation. My parents, dad, uncles, everybody came here from Italy, but they didn't get anything written in Italian to them.
Neither did my dad.
They, the thing about America, which I believe was good, was they accepted us, our beliefs, we kept our traditions, our language, everything we do, we still do. The heritage, we are Italian American, but we had to accommodate to America. America didn't accommodate to us. We became Americans. Nowadays, every little
My dad tells me when he was, I think Espejo, Mira, was the first English language he remembers learning. But he would just sit next to a kid, I guess, who was bilingual, and you have to learn.
that's it.
And you'll learn quicker than if you're coddled.
But now they give him everything. They give them everything, and nobody gets accustomed to the United States. And this. That's one of the reasons it's such a divided country because nobody has. It's not a one philosophy.
Melting
necessarily.
pot.
Yeah, the
The
melting
melting
pot.
pot.
What built the country is going to be its ultimate decline.
Right.
All right, but the problem with the illegals is it's expensive and it's taxpayer money. And
Well, I was going to say, where's the money coming from to educate them?
75% of our tax bill. I don't know how it is in other states. 75% of your tax bill is education.
Well, how did it, when you were in Hampton Bays, how did it increase class size? Give me an example. Like, what was the average class size for, let's say, high school?
Well, they would go into what was an English language learners class. So it was not the class size, but different classes altogether. Just English
different.
language.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Like a whole class of English language learners, and ESL and ELL. All the English class didn't necessarily get bigger, or the socialist class, but the English language.
So you had to hire teachers that could accommodate
yes, correct.
those students.
Yeah, it's expensive. It's expensive. That's the thing. It is expensive
And you
to
were saying
educate them.
some parents just didn't like it because
Yeah.
the tax money
Yeah.
is being stretched.
Right. But then again, since it was Hampton Bays, I threw it back on them. How many people are renting these houses out to all these people?
True.
So they're their own worst enemies sometimes also.
Okay. Now, I wanted to jump. We have about 10 or so minutes, 10 to 15 minutes left. Colleges. Let's talk a little bit about colleges. We talked about public school, private schools like St. Anthony's. What I'm seeing out there nowadays is a woke agenda, especially not just the elite colleges, but especially in the elite. Harvard, Stanford, with these kids in a sense of being indoctrinated. And you see these campuses where you have, in a sense, let's be honest, anti-Israeli sentiment on these campuses. And I don't understand. And I think it's a level of ignorance. They could be a smart student, but where are they getting their information, Frank? Where you're going to say, yes, I back, and they stop very short, and some of them don't, of supporting Hamas. Where they say oh, the Hamas, they had a right to, no, they didn't. And where are they getting, what are they watching, CNN? Where are they getting their news from? And why are colleges supporting that?
I'm pretty sure a lot of the youth in America, like 1/3 of them, I don't hold me to that number, gets their news from TikTok.
Yeah, that's another thing.
I mean, are you
Well, they're
kidding me?
talking about Osama bin Laden, that letter, and you
Right.
see these students almost in tears. Did you read the Osama bin Laden
They
letter?
just don't know.
Crazy.
They just don't know.
It's like saying, "Oh, did you read that Nazi letter? They got some good points." You
Yeah.
can't do that.
Right, right. They don't know. They don't know, and they're being,
Why is that?
in a way, school is failing. Not in a way. School's failing America. Schools are failing America. And that starts
I
with,
agree with you.
I noticed when I was a, first year teacher at William Floyd High School. The middle school kids, I'm like, this kid failed everything. Why is he in high school right now? And they just get passed along.
They move them along.
Eventually, it has to clog the system, and you can't just keep doing this. And
But what's scary is a lot of these students that we hear about. You see them; they're ripping down the hostage pictures of the Jewish hostages, and these are going to be future educators, future leaders. Some of them are future lawyers, and that's what's really scary, because these people are coming out of those schools, and some of them now hurt themselves. You see that?
Yeah.
Some of these companies, law firms, we ain't hiring them. And
Good.
that's their right. And I wouldn't hire somebody
Good.
that, you can have freedom of speech, but that doesn't mean I have to hire you.
Some things, just like the age old example, you can't yell fire in a movie theater. Freedom of speech is one thing, but you should not be allowed to say, you shouldn't be allowed to come here from another country on some visa and get free college, go to college, and then protest, say death to America.
Yeah.
You should be immediately, you're out of here. Oh no, but it's America. I can say what I want. No, there's some things you just should not be able to. That's ridiculous.
Frank, we pretty much have some members of Congress
That's correct.
that feel that maybe they don't say death to America, but they hate America. They're anti-Israeli. They're anti-Semites, clearly, and yet they get voted in. That tells you what that community must look like.